Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. So, today we start the classic series, The Chronicles of Narnia, which, you call them the Chronicles of Narnia, but several of the books actually take place significantly outside of Narnia, so there's reason to, not precisely call it that, but whatever. So, here's the thing. I grew up with a particular set of editions published in 1979 by Puffin Books. And eventually they got old and ragged and tired, and somebody, I think perhaps one of my parents, decided to purchase for me the Collier Books edition, which was apparently published in 1970, but obviously this particular printing of it was done much more recently than 1970. And the thing is that the version that I grew up with is one I have a great deal more affection for because while the text is the same, aspects of these books are not. For instance, take this cover. This was given to me as a boxed set of all 7 books, which, despite the fact that I have problems with the last one, I will be going through this whole set, which is not something that can be said for every single series that I'm going to be doing. But the thing is that the covers are hideous. This is a very 1970s-ish cover in its way, but it's hideous. It's not the most hideous cover in the boxed set, but it's hideous. This is the cover that I grew up reading. This is the Puffin 1979 publication edition, which, frankly, I find, first of all, more evocative, and second, much better looking. I think that I understand the reasoning for having the wardrobe opening directly into the Narnian winter is valid, but I think that it's much more intriguing to see this cover, which was not illustrated, obviously, by the same person. This cover, I am not wholly certain, but I suspect that this cover, because I haven't actually had the opportunity to double check and look into it, was illustrated by the same person who did the interior illustrations, Pauline Baynes, whereas the cover of the hideous version was done by a man named Roger Hane, with pictures adapted from illustration by Pauline Baynes. Now let's get to those pictures adapted from Pauline Baynes' illustrations. This is what it looks like in in the newer copy, the more recently printed copy, the one dating from 1970. Here's the picture that this originally was. Isn't this more? Just more? There are more creatures standing over Aslan. You have the witch standing in the background atop whether that's the stone, supposed to be the stone table or what, I don't know. But once again, later simplified version. This is the original version. It's so much better. And there are more illustrations in my 1970 Puffin version than there are in the Collier Books one as well. And I have a deep preference for the Puffin one. I did not use the Puffin one for the reread because my Puffin copy is tired and old and ragged and the pages are falling out, but I love it dearly and you would have to pay me large amounts of money to get rid of it, mostly because then I would have to go on a lengthy, expensive trolling online to try to find that exact book only in, better shape. So the illustrations that I'll be showing, these lovely interior illustrations, are going to be the ones from the older version, not the newer one. So, let's talk about this, which I think in a lot of ways is the most iconic image out of the whole of the Narnia series. For anybody who doesn't know, and if you don't know, I don't know why you don't know, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself because these books are magnificent, or at least most of them are. I object to the seventh for reasons, but this is the story of four children. Peter the eldest, then Susan, then Edmund, and then Lucy, two boys, two girls, brothers and sisters, who have been sent away to the countryside during the Second World War. This was a thing they did during the Second World War because, of course, the Germans were bombing London. So you want to get your children away from where the bombs are falling and sending them out into the country, which also was where there were a lot fewer food shortages because that's where the farms were. It was a good idea all round just to send them away. So these children have been sent away to this manor house out in the middle of nowhere. And while they're there, they discover that there is this magic wardrobe that leads to a magical kingdom, that you open up the wardrobe and you walk into it, and every so often, in no particular predictable fashion, you can walk through it and come out the other side in Narnia. So anybody who makes coming out of the closet jokes involving Narnia, those of you who don't know why, that's why. You're welcome. You should have read the books. So the first time Lucy arrives, and this is Lucy returning rather than Lucy arriving, but the first time she arrives, she comes out and she's in a wood somewhere, and it's summer where she is, and in this wood it's winter, and there's a lamppost, a city lamppost, a standard London city lamppost just in the middle of the woods glowing at night. And it's one of the most iconic images of the whole series, this single outpost of modern Western industrial civilization just sitting there in these cold woods glowing with no apparent power source, and it's this marvelously evocative image, and I've always considered that to be so much more a centerpiece to these books than anything else. Because it's the first thing that we really see of Narnia, the first thing that makes a real impact of Narnia. It's the last thing that the children see, that they, in the course of this book, they arrive there. There is a fight with the evil witch who has made it winter, always winter in Narnia for 100 years and never Christmas. And they are the prophesized kings and queens who are to come and sit on the thrones at the palace in Cair Paravel and lead to a golden age of Narnia. And indeed, they beat the witch, and there's a lot of Christian metaphor in this that I'm not going to talk about because I refuse to. But the thing is that they have their period ruling, and at the end of it, they're hunting a white stag, because hunting white stags is a very, very traditional thing to do in, Western fairy tale style fiction and legend. And the white stag leads them right up to the lamppost. And they've been in Narnia for so long, they've been so absorbed in this magical country that they've forgotten their origins. They've forgotten London and the Second World War. They've forgotten everything, including lampposts. But they find the lamppost, and it leads them back out of Narnia, where they come popping out of the wardrobe to discover that all of those many, many years they have spent ruling a country have gone by in a mere instant on the other side of the wardrobe, and everything on the side of the wardrobe is exactly where and when they left it. And that is, of course, the conceit of Narnia, is that you step into it and you're there for however long, and when you return to the real world, no time at all has passed, and you resume your life as though nothing happened. But that lamppost is the first and last image of Narnia. And And it is so... It's a very, very specific, and I often feel powerful image, this single light glowing in the darkness, that I really, really love it, which is why I'm waxing rhapsodic about it. Also, there are things to say in regards of the 7th book, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Lion Witch and Wardrobe. So here's another fundamental image that comes out of Narnia. In Narnia, the animals talk, but they're not just talking. They are anthropomorphized. When they go into the Beavers Dam, it's not a Beavers Dam like you would see on a nature special, which is a big dirt cave that beavers live in. It's got a door, and it's got a stove and beds, and and a table and a kitchen, and it's very, very comfortable, very, very rural English living. You know, you would find a home that might look like that somewhere in the Yorkshire Dales back in, 1940, whenever. And that's the thing about Narnia, is that these animals, all of these, the animals in particular, are very, very anthropomorphized in that way. They're always feeding people buttered toast and having tea. It's an extremely English book. And by that I mean, of course, British English, as in the great empire of Britain and the sun never sets on the British Empire, British English. It's very, very much that. Also, the eternal question of how the kids didn't have their legs freeze off while they were trekking through the forest in the middle of winter, because seriously, knickerbocker shorts are not what you wear in the depths of winter. And it's winter. So this last one, this final image, just, it comes... I wanted this because this is simplified writing. It is a book for children, and there are a lot of things in this book that are perhaps one might see them as overwrought, that are very, very hyper-dramatic, that you have the witch when she is talking about her rights to the traitor because of the deep magic, and she starts talking about how, and let us say I have forgotten it, answered Aslan gravely. Tell us of this deep magic. Tell you, said the witch, her voice growing suddenly shriller. Tell you what is written on the very table of stone which stands beside us. Tell you what is written in letters deep as a spear, as long on the trunk of the world ash tree. Tell you what is engraved on the scepter of the emperor beyond the sea. You at least know the magic which the emperor put into Narnia at the very beginning. You know that every traitor belongs to me as my lawful prey, and that for every treachery I have a right to a kill. It's very dramatic. But the thing about that kind of drama, that kind of language is, again, it lends itself very well to being evocative, to saying things that pull you in a way that simplified, blunt language does not always do. And this is a picture of Cair Paravel that is in the middle of the book, and it's in that final chapter when we're talking about the children being crowned, and they talk about how that the castle of Cair Paravel on its little hill towered up above them, and long miles of bluish-green waves breaking forever and ever on the beach, and oh, the cry of the seagulls. Have you heard it? Can you remember? There's a lot of poetry in this book, and it's lovely, and it pulls you in, and it's as much a fundamental in its way to fantasy as Lord of the Rings is. Because this is that first fantasy book. You don't read Lord of the Rings first. You read this first. Or possibly The Hobbit, but I haven't read The Hobbit because I have issues with The Hobbit. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say today. So we will get back to this series eventually, and I'll see you all next week.